So I've run farmers markets in other cities, in Hanford and Pleasanton, and the thing that would happen almost every other week was someone would come in with the best whatever kind of food product in the world, and then I would eat it and I would verify that it was also the best brownie or whatever they were making, and then they'd say, can I sell it in the farmers market? And I'd say no, because you have to have a health department permit. And then they would go to the health department, and then their dreams would be squashed because they would find out they needed a $100,000 commercial kitchen to make their brownies. And then they started saying, how many brownies do I need to make to get $100,000 profit? And that's about 200,000 brownies, and it just doesn't make sense, right? So then they would go back to just making them illegally and selling them to a few friends, which doesn't really create jobs or business, or they would just not do it at all. So the cottage food law was passed to change that. It was actually a baker in LA who was selling all this great bread he was making out of the stone oven that he made in his backyard. And he learned in Europe how to make bread, and he was selling it, and someone turned him in, and so he took it on to make this cottage food law happen in California. We were the 35th state to pass one, so it was not something new by the time it happened here. But it did pass unanimously, so Democrats and Republicans both can agree on food. It was primarily opposed by health departments. So that's kind of an interesting perspective to think about when you're working with a health department. They view your kitchen as a petri dish, primarily made to grow salmonella and E. coli, and they're amazed that anyone could live if they've eaten food produced in a kitchen. And I think they're especially suspect of church potlucks. That must really drive a food inspector crazy, right? Because who knows what you do in your kitchen? You're bringing it, it's sitting out there for an hour, oh my gosh, right? People should be flopping dead all the time at church potlucks if you have the perspective of a health department inspector. So what happens now is the person brings me their brownies, says, can I sell it in the farmer's market? And I can say yes if you get your cottage food license. So the cottage food license allows you to make food in your home kitchen and legally sell it either directly, if you get a type A license, or indirectly. Type B license allows you to bring it to Peeves or Bella Fruta or someone else online, and you can now legally sell it through other people. So now that person could come and get that license. It's about $35. It's a very easy process. If you get type B, which I would recommend because that gives you more options, then they're going to inspect your home once a year, theoretically. And here's what they're looking for. So back to putting yourself in the head of a health department inspector. If you say, I'm going to keep my food cold, how do you know if your food is cold? What piece of equipment would you use to determine whether food was cold? Thank you very much. So you should say you have a thermometer to say, I'm going to keep my food cold, and I know it'll be cold because I'll use a thermometer, and my hot food I'm going to keep hot because I have a thermometer that will tell me that. Instead of saying I'm going to wipe down my counter between each batch that I make, you're going to say I wipe down my counter with bleach water, which I keep here. I keep soap next to my sink. I use gloves if I'm using this kind of a product to have a finished product. I have doors to keep kids, especially, and or cats and dogs, but especially kids. They're just grimy creatures that you do not want in a kitchen. So you have doors on your kitchen so that when you're making your cottage food, you can keep them out. Pretty easy, right? It's all very common sense types of requirements. You're going to write that in the operating statement. You're going to write down what kinds of foods you're going to make and what kinds of ingredients they are. And they have a sample label that you'll use. It'll say, this is Craig's lemon preserve jam, and it was made in a home kitchen, and the ingredients are lemons, sugar, water, and pectin or whatever. And then that's it. It's pretty easy. There is something that says you can only sell up to $65,000 a year, I think is the number. But we've been told there's no way for them to check. They're not interested in checking. They really want you to be successful. That's just a way to say, at some point you should start thinking, if you're doing this enough, you probably should get a full commercial kitchen at some point. It's really meant to be a starter set for you, the cottage food law. So that's kind of the process. And once you do that, then you can now sell. So that was in my process, my brain. My name's Craig. I forgot to say that. I have Peeves Public House. I've been involved with revitalization. I used to run the business incubator here. So I was kind of putting on my business incubator hat and saying, okay, now the person comes to me. They say, the brownies are great. Yes, I eat the brownies are great. You have to get a health department permit. Now they get the cottage food law permit. That's great. And then the person has their bags of brownies, and they walk into Save Mart and say, we would like to have you sell our brownies for us. And at that point, potential for squash dreams happens again, right? Because the grocery store is going to say, you are so sweet, you cottage food people. We just love you. We think you're the cutest, and please, buy something before you leave, but we're not going to be selling someone's brownies out of a homemade kitchen, right? They're just not going to, because it's a pain in the neck. I mean, they want to come in, someone gives an order, 12 pallets come in, they sell them, they're barcoded, everything's ready to go, right? So I thought was the next step after commercial kitchen is someone has to buy your product. So that's why we did Peeves Local Market, so that you're guaranteed, if you get your cottage food license to make a product, we agree to buy it from you. And so people come in, they sell us their first product, they know that they have a shelf, they know if they don't know what an invoice is, we'll write it out for them and show them where they can download one, and we'll tell them, we're going to reorder from you, so you need to think about what your next batch is going to be. Because a lot of them will make a batch and then they're like, all right, done. And then we sell them all and then we call them and they're like, oh, I didn't really think about that. And then they have to start all over again. But then, then the next time they're ready and they're starting to go, wow, these jars are really expensive. I need to start thinking about how to bring down my cost of my jars, or everyone else's labels are really pretty except mine. So you start thinking about design. And it really acts as a little bit of an incubator, and that's what I was kind of hoping it would do. And then, once they say, well, I'm selling 24 jars a week over at Peeves, and you say that to Nick at Sam's Deli, he's going to go, wow, that's pretty good, because they're not that big, so that's quite a few jars. Yeah, we'll carry yours too, and then you can go to Bella Fruta, or you can go to Sierra Nut House, and then you can go to the market at Weston Herndon. They're a pretty big grocery store, and then once you're fulfilling those orders, then you could go to Save Mart and say, look, now I'm doing X units a week. I know what my food costs are. I know how to invoice. I know how to fulfill orders. And now you're more of a legit business. But if no one's helping you on that first rung on getting up the ladder, it can be pretty frustrating. So that's kind of what we're about, is getting those cottage food folks going, so that it's that thing, if you know there's a shelf waiting for you and you're an entrepreneur, then that, I'm hoping, is a real incentive to get you going and wanting to make something to put on that empty shelf that's waiting for you. As opposed to usually you make it and go, awesome, now I have 800 jars of Phil's plum jam. And you're going, now what? Now I sold one. Now I have 799 jars of Phil's plum jam, and it starts looking pretty daunting. Now there's a shelf waiting for you. So the other thing that we do is we do a monthly food entrepreneur night. So if there are entrepreneurs that aren't taking advantage of resources, they're not very good entrepreneurs. So that's a free resource. There's a different speaker every month. But even more importantly than that, it's a group that gets together that you can say, I'm paying $3 a jar and that's killing me. I need to get it down to $1 a jar. And someone else will say, oh, I just got done researching jars and here's where I found the $1 jar that I'm using now. So anytime we develop networks, especially within an industry, and I would say startup food entrepreneurs is an industry, and they can network with each other and share information, it helps them jump up the ladder more quickly, climb up the ladder more quickly. Jump up the ladder? Who jumps up ladders? That's stupid. Climb up the ladder, Craig. All right, we're back. So some other things to think about. So type B, do type B, that allows you to sell to someone else who can then resell your product. Social media is really an amazing tool for anyone in any kind of a startup business, especially that's selling directly to a customer. So if you have food entrepreneurs and they say they're not comfortable with social media, as a grown-up, your response is to say, get over it, right? No whining allowed. I don't care how uncomfortable it makes you feel, get over it. There's never before in the history of mankind have you had the ability to start a business, have something for free, post on it for free every day from your computer or your phone. You don't even have to have a computer, and be able to throw pictures of your product up 2 or 3 times a day, 20 times a day. It doesn't even matter. You've got this channel to build customers, keep them engaged, do events with them, whatever you want. So I get so tired of having entrepreneurs say, well, I don't really like to use technology or whatever. That drives you crazy, right? In the old days, think about what you'd have to do to get word out about your product. Right, would you buy a $5,000 ad in the Fresno Bee that 12 people read, right? Or a bunch of radio station ads? You know, the #1 radio station in our market has 8% of the market share. Everyone else has less than that. So how are you going to get the word out with all these radio ads, right? Now you have this free resource. Does it get to everybody? No, but it gets to a whole bunch of people for free. So that's pretty good when you're just getting started. So if you have someone in your congregation or your nonprofit that can help with that, match the food entrepreneur to the social media person, which is like a 14-year-old usually, and get them going. Other people, if you're making a really good product, will do it, and you can give them some bottles of your butter pickles or whatever, and that can work too. The other thing is accounting and bookkeeping. You have accountants and bookkeepers in your congregation. You just don't know it because they never talk, right? But they're there. And so you want to get those people connected to your food entrepreneurs as well. So the best thing in the world is QuickBooks because billions of people know how to use it. So you're never very far from someone who can help you. Costs a few $100s, but just like with getting their health department permit, if they don't have good finances, it's going to limit their ability to go out and get funding. So even if they use the CDFI that Jeremy's talking about next door, which specializes in loans for small businesses, he's still going to ask you for your financial stuff. And if you don't have it, why would anyone give you a loan, right? You wouldn't give me a loan if I couldn't show you my finances, or if you did, you're crazy, right? At least should, even if they're bad, at least I should be able to show them to you. So pair those resources together. So we're all thinking about the commercial kitchen that you have in your church. That's great. We're going to talk about that next. But don't forget you have other supportive folks in your congregation that can help out, right? And so commercial kitchen. So cottage food law was primarily designed for home kitchen. And I know the title of this is a little misleading. When they called and said, what do you want the title to be? I said, I don't know, something about cottage food laws and commercial kitchens and churches. And so it said cottage food law and church kitchens. That was really because I was just mumbling stuff in the car phone when I gave them a title. They're really separate things. So the kitchen in a church, the last group schooled me, is not always licensed by the health department. Is that correct?
Almost never.
Almost never. It used to be almost always. So I don't know how that stopped happening, because the health departments usually want to make sure that anybody that's serving to a group has a licensed kitchen.
Church hired a bunch of lobbyists.
Did they? Good. Guys sitting there smoking cigars going, you don't really want to be bothering these people, do you? So I would say that there's a step then. There's a new intermediate step is work with your cottage food license folks and get them going, because the faster they start selling their first product legally and keeping track of it and learning what food costs are and learning who's going to be able to buy it, the better off they're going to be while you work on getting your commercial kitchen licensed at your church, so that then they can grow and make product in there. I put the information down here, D. Palmaville at co.fresno.ca.us. He's the head of the health department, and I think if not everybody emailed him, that would probably be good, because he won't like it if I do that to him. But if maybe there are some representatives of the group here who would be willing to do that. That's what happened in our last session. So they were going to talk to him about how do we do some kind of a hybrid to get our kitchens licensed earlier, and then maybe put us on a plan where we could spend money every year to get it up to be a full commercial kitchen that we could then rent out or make available to our congregations. So he can kind of work on that with you. But you know, for a whole bunch of people to put together one commercial kitchen is a much less of a daunting task than it is for every food entrepreneur individually to do it. So hopefully you would have the combined resources to go out and find used equipment or do some of the work yourselves within the congregation to be able to get it up, lay the right kind of flooring in, and put the splash guard around and some of the other stuff you have to do that's not very technical. But some of them already are licensed. I'm sure of that. So some of the bigger, maybe newer, better funded churches, they must all be licensed. I would be very surprised if they weren't. Yes?
So
Pastor.
they license the person, not the kitchen.
No, you can license the kitchen, and then other people can come in and use it. And you're making your food in a licensed commercial kitchen. Now there are really two kinds. One is someone making a product that's ready to eat, like maybe you're doing a tamales sale, and you're having people come in and buy plates of food out of a commercial kitchen. That's one kind. The other kind is for manufacturing. So when you talk to the health department, if you want people to be making products at a volume that they're going to be able to sell to a grocery store, a bunch of canned items or things like that, then you'd want to think about talking to the health department about what you need to be able to manufacture in the commercial kitchen, as opposed to just cook like a restaurant in a commercial kitchen. So those kind of a fork in the road. Are you a restaurant, or are you making products to sell to grocery stores? They're both commercial kitchens, they just have some different rules to them. And that certainly you'll even have different equipment in there if you want to make them. Yes?
So basically what you're saying is that the kitchen in church that's not at code cannot be used as a cottage kitchen.
I don't know. That's what they're going to talk to David about. And he is very pro. We're very lucky in Fresno County to have someone who's very pro startup entrepreneurship. So,
because I know the health department gave me this a couple of years ago.
at your church?
I was serving coffee, and I had a little sign out saying I was serving coffee, and they shut down the coffee, saying you cannot advertise it because you are not at code anywhere on your property, and furthermore, you can only serve to the parish. So then we redefined our parish, continued to sell coffee, but didn't advertise it.
Yeah. So, you know, like I say, you kind of, if you put your put yourself in the perspective of the health department inspector. They're the only ones that oppose this cottage food law because they think kitchens are filthy, right? And you shouldn't be allowed to cook for other people in your home kitchen. That's their perspective, right? And if you don't appreciate that, then it becomes very frustrating. So we don't have to agree with it. I certainly don't. But I know when I'm dealing with them, I'm likely to get someone who comes at me from that mindset. But the law now says you can cook in your commercial kitchen, and they're kind of working with leadership that's saying, no, we support this. We think this is a good thing, so don't be a roadblock. And they're trying to find ways that would make it work. And, you know, from the leadership on down, that's the message that they're getting. So in any organization, you're going to have some friction and people that like it the old way or think we're all crazy for doing this new thing. And it kind of has to work its way through the organization a little bit. But 1,200 new businesses in California started in year one under the cottage food law, and dozens of those were in Fresno County and also Madera County and Tulare County around us. So it is happening. I would think, just from a rational standpoint, which doesn't always work, that the church kitchen would be even easier to approve than the home kitchen would be. If the result is the same thing, you have a cottage food maker that is going to be making jam or bread or whatever is on the list. Yes, Pastor?
This not apply to when you have a weekly luncheon for people to come and you provide that for them. It's a different thing, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, so some of you are saying you're not licensed at all, which is a little surprising to me, but I think if you had a health inspector in there, they'd say, no, you can't use this kitchen to cook for a bunch of people. Maybe they're letting you get away with it because you're not selling, but if they knew that you were selling out of a kitchen that wasn't licensed to be a commercial kitchen, I think they would have a problem with it, or maybe they're just ignoring churches right now, or, I mean, I see street vendors popping up everywhere around the city and the county, so I think they have their hands full probably doing a bunch of stuff, which is why the head of the health department has said this is not an issue for us, right? If you make more than $65,000 a year, which says you should move to a commercial kitchen, not only won't we know, we don't have a way to figure it out, and we really don't care. When it was a nice thing because he said, you are not a priority. And usually that really hurts your feelings. But when it's a regulating agency like the health department or the IRS and they say you're not our priority, it's like, all right, that's good. All right, we'll run with that. So I think, you know, there still might be negotiation. There still might be the one inspector or the 5 inspectors out of 50 that really are hard about this. But, you know, I think you have resources. You can talk to us about it. We can talk to the head of the health department about it. You can come in another time and hopefully find someone else who will be more reasonable with you. But by and large, we're getting reports that it's a very reasonable process, and to not be intimidated by it. But again, it was designed for home kitchens, not necessarily commercial kitchens. So we'll have to figure out where that middle part is. So there is a list of what you can and can't do. I mean, is it 30 minutes? There is a list. So the thing that I recommend to food entrepreneurs all the time is don't go into the cottage food law with the ideas that you have on what you want to make and then look at the list and be mad at the list because it's not going to let you do what you want, right? That's frustrating. And they're not going to change the list for you, and the list is stupid and no one likes it, but it is the list. So from an entrepreneur standpoint, if you want to be a food entrepreneur or one of the people you're working with wants to be a food entrepreneur, it is much better to go into it saying, I don't know what I'm going to make. I love cooking, so you could throw anything at me and I'll turn it into something good. So I'm going to work off the approved list and then develop what my product is going to be, knowing that I'm already doing what I'm allowed to do, rather than saying, but it won't let me do tamales, right? We always hear about tamales. Well, you can't use meat, and you can't use dairy as a something that's going to stay as a standalone ingredient, so it can't be cream filled or cheese filled, right? So if you can't use meat, you can't have cheese in it. Now you're down to vegetarian tamales, which there is a market for, but it is much smaller, and I'm no longer your target market. But it's possible. You know, Liz at Casa de Tamales does a lot of vegan and vegetarian and gluten-free tamales, so that's all right on the list. So again, you look at the list, see what it says you can do, take those ingredients and turn them into something good.
Where do you find this list?
It's if you Google Fresno Health Cottage, put in those 3 words, the cottage food page will pop up. And I imagine it would be the same in the other counties, but on Fresno County, it has a really nice frequently asked questions list. It has the applications there, and it's pretty straightforward from that point. The only thing that isn't straightforward is about 8,000 characters in the web address. It's / this and / that, and I can't keep track of all of it. So it's not an easy thing to get to, but if you just Google those 3 words, boom, you're already there. So focus in on that's on that list, turn that into good food, get licensed. That's really your way to enter business without incurring a bunch of time and a bunch of cost, and get things going and start making flour tortillas. You can't make tamales, you could make flour tortillas, right? What is the greatest single food item on the planet? Flour tortillas. Hardly anyone's making them, right? Not that tough. So start with that, and then you can start saying, okay, flour costs this, whatever, all the ingredients, there aren't very many. You know, this is my amount of time I put into it, so now I know I need to sell them at this price. And then when you come to Peeves, I have to buy them, and then I have to mark them up even higher. So it might be that you're selling your jam for $8 a jar, but I'm only going to buy it from you for $4 a jar. So you have to think about that too. So can you make money at $4 a jar? Hopefully. And then you will get a check from us once a month for all of the product that we've sold, which is nice to have some product that you don't have to drive 90 miles to set up the market when it's 113 degrees and stand there and maybe not even sell any jam for $8. You can sell some in the market for $4, and we'll be the ones taking care of all of the shelf space and rent and insurance and employees and all the other costs that go along with it. So that's another thing to think about, wholesale versus retail, because when you get type B, you can do wholesale, but you have to be willing to sell it at someone who has enough ability to mark up their product. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, do that. Wholesale, retail, is that clear? It's all right? So, so that's about it. Yes, sir.
When the cottage food, can you sell something to an end user who's using it for another end user?
So as like a product?
Yeah.
So if you made barbecue sauce, you could sell it to us, and then we could incorporate that into our barbecued ribs, and then we could sell the barbecued ribs, yes. What else? Just quickly on another thing that you should be aware of is crowdsource funding. Crowdsource funding, the most probably well known around here is Kickstarter. It's a way for people to raise money for a project. So it could be a piece of equipment that they need that's holding them back from growing to the next step. And they can go to a variety of different websites, and they can put money out to the congregation and all their family and all their friends, and people can contribute $25 or $100, and they get some reward back for it. And then at the end, they get to have that money, and then they get to go buy their pizza oven or their dehydrator or whatever it is they need. So that's another resource that's out there that really never in the history of mankind has been easier to do than it is right now. And there are ways to do it where it's a zero interest loan, through something called Kiva that we do with Fresno CDFI, which is Jeremy Hofer, who's next door from here. So you can do up to $10,000 on a loan, or you can do Kickstarter, which gives you the money. You don't have to pay it back. You just have to pay the rewards that you said you would give people. So if you said, if you give me $25, I'll give you a hat for Phil's Marmalade. And then you can walk around advertising when you wear his hat. But that's the little gift that he said he'd give you for putting in money to buy a new oven or stove for him, or packaging equipment. So that's something else that it's right around us. You know, why not take advantage of it? And there are other services like that too. And so most of it happens online. And if you have a bunch of Facebook friends already, and then you decide you're going to do crowdsourced funding, then when you can either tell 100 people that you just started a Kickstarter campaign, or you can tell 600 people that you started a Kickstarter campaign, right? The more friends and likes you're getting on your page, you can start translating that into a greater market share of people who would support your venture to get your next product or your food truck or whatever it is. How's that? Any questions on any of this stuff? Trying to think what I missed that I wanted to tell you about.
You mentioned the once a month entrepreneurship.
Oh, yes.
You didn't say when and where.
Okay, third Tuesday of the month at 7 o'clock, Food Entrepreneur Night. So the next one will be June 18th, Paul McCartney's birthday. And we will have, Beth, thank you for smiling. June 18th, it's going to be, this month's speaker will be Kate King. She runs a business in Sanger called Adco, and they make customized food packaging machinery. So we try to have different speakers come in like that, because you might be making 20 jars of your plum jam and not even be thinking about it, but all of a sudden when you get your order from Costco and they want 2,000 jars of your plum jam, you have to think about, how am I going to make it? So if you know about this resource, at some point it's going to be helpful for you. Maybe it's something that you even put in your church's commercial kitchen, so that you're able to turn out a lot of product more quickly and more inexpensively than if everyone's having to work and get paid.
That's where?
And it's at Peeves Public House, my restaurant. And that's where the local market is as well, where we're buying the local products. And if you really enjoy this whole idea about food entrepreneurship, you should come by every once in a while and buy some product from real food entrepreneurs. That's the only way this thing keeps going, is if we keep developing markets for it. So it's very unusual that we have a market where everything is local in that market. I've been pitching up in the Bay Area, and they keep saying, oh, we should have one of these in San Francisco. We should have one of these in Santa Cruz. We should have one of these in Sonoma County. They don't. We do. Right? But if we want stuff that's cool and fun and interesting like that, and filled with entrepreneurs coming in, putting stuff on their shelf, then it takes community support for that to fundamentally work. Good. Yeah. We started in December, and we have 135 local vendors. So it's 135 businesses that are making money with every product that's being sold. So that makes it pretty fun. And when I just went up and pitched it in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, and I said 135 vendors, they all had the same noise that you just made, which was, oh my goodness, that's incredible. So we have it here locally, but we want to make sure that the community is supportive of it, so it can keep supporting more entrepreneurs.
How long can someone stay on one of your shelves?
Well, food shelf life is an interesting topic, right? Canned jam can stay on for a few years, or jarred jam can stay on for a few years, but if you're making bread, it might be 2 days or 1 day. So you have to think about that in terms of your product. If you're bringing bread that's only going to be good for one day, I'm going to say bring 3 loaves of bread. If you're bringing in jam, I might say bring in 24 jars because I don't have to worry about it. Well, we promise a shelf. At some point, we would probably mark it down or just use it in the kitchen if it weren't really selling very much, but we haven't had that issue really. We have more of an issue of entrepreneurs being able to keep up with demand once they get going, and especially when they get into 2 or 3 places, now all of a sudden they're pretty overwhelmed by what they can make in their kitchen, and that hopefully gets them up to the next level.
Have you had to have a waiting list yet for?
Not yet. You know, mostly we've had to spread stuff out to fill up our shelves. Then we've kind of got it narrowed down, and then Mother's Day hit, and then they were empty again. And with 135 vendors, it's hard to get them all, take time to call or email them and say, bring in another one. And some of them show up that day, and some of them show up 2 months later when they come down the hill. So it's a real interesting supply and demand thing. But what I'm doing up in the Bay Area is I'm pitching to investors to be able to open more local markets in the Central Valley, so that if your fig jam is selling really well at Peeves, then I can move you to Oakhurst or Visalia or some other place, and then you could get up to your 2nd store, 3rd store, 4th store, and then we could even do distribution between them, which would make it much easier than having all of you have to deliver at the store on your own. So trying to bring some distribution and scale to the business, which then I also think about, if we do one in Reedley, then there's going to be a big splash that people in Reedley are going to know they could become food entrepreneurs. And sort of everywhere we land, it sort of, spreads that message of opportunity, right? And that's what we're trying to do.